One thing you absolutely have to do in Munich, especially in the warmer months, is to take a walk through the English Garden. The English Garden is one of the largest city parks in the world. Is it the largest? Hard to say. In my research I found different lists. Some parks are simply forests, others are located on the outskirts of the city and are not surrounded by city. But it doesn't really matter. The English Garden is very, very large. And I will cycle through it in its entirety and show you what you can discover there.
Okay, so hello there. So behind me is the Englischer Garten. That's my video today. And here we are at the south end of the Englischer Garten. And if you look over there, there's the embassy, the American embassy. And if we turn around this way, over there, there's the Hofgarten, and sometimes you read that the Hofgarten is part of the Englischer Garten. It's not. And over here, that building is the building of the where our Prime Minister sits, the Bavarian one. Americans would say governor. And now let's go to the Englischer Garten.
Not quite so fast, Philip. Maybe we should take a look at the Hofgarten first. The Hofgarten is a French Renaissance garden. Everything is geometric and nothing has grown naturally. The English Garden, on the other hand, is supposed to resemble an English landscape. There are no geometric shapes here, but that doesn't make it natural. But more on that later. Between the Hofgarten and the English Garden stands the figure of Harmless from 1803. It actually represents the Greek youth Antinous and marked the entrance of the English Garden. He is holding a plaque that reads, "Harmless, walk here, then clears, new strengthen to everyone, back to duty." That's how we want to do it. Between the American consulate and the English Garden is something that has little to do with Munich, but a lot to do with German history. A real piece of the Berlin Wall. It divided Berlin and the two German states from August 13, 1961 to November 9, 1989. Right next to it, on Prinzregentenstraße, is the Haus der Kunst. You can tell from the architecture that it is a Nazi building. It was opened in 1937. Its past can also be seen in the ceiling ornamentation. Today, changing exhibitions are held here. I will certainly make a separate video about Haus der Kunst in my museums series. And right next to the Haus der Kunst is the Eisbach-Welle, the Eisbach wave. Munich is a city of wave surfers, even though the nearest seashore is 450 kilometers, 280 miles away. Two brothers first started surfing the wave in the Eisbach in the 1970s. With two self-made boards and a rope that they attached to the bridge, they wanted to simulate surfing. They soon realized that the rope was sagging, so they didn't need it at all, and so wave surfing began in the city. The Eisbach-Welle became known worldwide, despite safety concerns. Surfing was briefly considered to be banned, but was finally allowed at your own risk. To date, there have been no serious accidents involving surfers. Until now. Unfortunately, a 33-year-old female surfer had a serious accident on the night of April 17th. The safety line of the surfboard got caught on the bottom of the creek, causing her to be constantly pushed underwater. Half an hour later, the fire department was able to free her. At the time of the production, she is in a critical condition in hospital. Hopefully, she will make a full recovery. I was able to take these clips on April 19th. However, the wave was later closed until further notice. I hope the city of Munich keeps this attraction and the authorities don't overreact. As terrible as the event was, I'm sure that the surfers are aware of the risk. It's a wild river after all, and risk is simply a part of life. If you don't want that, it's best not to get out of bed at all. But back to the rear entrance of the Haus der Kunst. This is where the Goldene bar is located. The bar was originally the artist party room, then for a while after the war it was the officers' mess of the American soldiers. Today it is once again a freely accessible bar. Unfortunately I was there a little too early, so only stock photos here. but the interior is really golden and spectacular. The Japanese tea house is located behind the Haus der Kunst in the English Garden. The tea house was donated to the city of Munich by the Japanese twin city of Sapporo on the occasion of the 1972 Olympic Games. Unfortunately, access is only possible on certain days, for example during the Japan Festival that takes place on July 20. But you can also attend a Japanese tea ceremony here 2 days a month. You will find a link below to find out for yourself when these take place. If you follow the Eisbach on the right hand side, you will come to the Rumford monument. It was dedicated to the Earl of Rumford, Sir Benjamin Thompson, one of the fathers of the English Garden. Perhaps a good time to take in some history. In 1777, Elector Karl Theodor inherited Bavaria because the Bavarian Wittelsbach line died out. Born in Brussels, he was originally not very fond of Bavaria and wanted to exchange it for what is now Belgium. But it didn't work out, so he had to make Bavaria more beautiful. In 1789 he therefore ordered his Massachusetts-born Minister of War, Benjamin Thompson, to create the English Garden. However, the court gardener Friedrich Ludwig von Skell was responsible for the details. Originally the park was also called Theodor's Park, but the name English Garden quickly became established as this was the landscape concept. The intention was to move away from the geometric French gardens and towards natural forms. Although, of course, nothing here is natural. Every stream, every pond, every hill and every tree was planned, and the natural surroundings of swamp and forest had to make way. If you follow the Eisbach a little further, you come to the small Eisbach wave. It is a little easier to surf. In recent months, access has been made more difficult by moving the fence to the weir. The whole thing is a political issue and is likely to become even more controversial in the near future due to the accident. If you follow the Eisbach even further and leave the English Garden briefly, you come to a university building that now houses the Geschwister Scholl Institute for Political Science, the place where I studied. Before that, the building was previously the studio of Radio Free Europe from 1973. In 1981 there was even a bomb attack on the building in which fortunately nobody died. Next to it is the Tivoli Straße streetcar station. In summer, children have fun jumping into the water at the Eisbachwelle and drifting down to here. They then take the streetcar back to the Eisbachwelle. However, I must point out once again that swimming in the Eisbach is prohibited. It is also dangerous, as some idiots occasionally sink their old bicycles or electric scooters there, so there can be obstacles there that swimmers can get caught on. But I would also like to take up the cudgels for the surfers. In recent years they have repeatedly saved swimmers from drowning. Tivoli Straße also crosses the English Garden here in an east-west direction. Also, only bicycles and public transport are allowed to use the street. If you follow it a little, you will first find the Orangerie on the left, where art exhibitions are occasionally held. Shortly afterwards, you will reach the Chinese Tower. The 25-meter, 82-feet-high Chinese Tower was built as early as 1790, in the style of a Chinese pagoda. At that time, China was all the rage. In 1944, the original tower burned down during a bombing raid. Unfortunately, the tower is no longer open to the public. Only a brass band still climbs it to play for the beer garden visitors. There was already an inn here in the early 19th century, but it was only after the Second World War that the beer garden was built here. Today, the Chinese Tower Beer Garden is the second largest beer garden in Munich with seating for 7,000 people. You should also take a look behind the Chinese Tower restaurant. There you will find the beautiful old Ökonomie estate. Behind the Ökonomie is the stone bench from 1838. Its inscription reads, "Here where you walk, They used only to be forest and swamp. The Monopteros is just a few steps away from the Chinese tower. This circular temple, designed in the Roman Greek style, was built in 1836. From here you have a magnificent view over the English Garden and the city of Munich. Below the Monopteros is a small group of trees, in the middle of which is an old boundary stone from 1728 that mark the old city boundary of Munich. There's also a memorial of the storm of 1988, which uprooted many trees in the park. The large meadow by the Schwabinger Bach is used by tourists and students from the nearby university in summer. I also lay here between seminars and studied my books or simply enjoyed the sun. It is also used for sports. People play volleyball, football or balance on slacklines here. But you shouldn't be shocked if you see 1 or 2 naked people here. Nudism is definitely allowed here, but I think it had decreased. It was even more common in the 70s and 80s. But there was one thing that really annoyed me about my trip through the English Garden. I found this pile of garbage. Enjoy the sun here, drink a beer, eat a pizza, but take your garbage back with you afterwards. It really is a mess, and I will call anyone out I catch doing it. If you continue north, you come to Kleinhesseloher See, which was created in 1803. This is the home of many water birds. 2 islands, access to which is prohibited, offer them quiet breeding grounds. When my friend Mike, the one who occasionally walked through the picture, and I were there, the geese had just their chicks. Apparently beavers also live here, but we didn't see them. You can also hire a pedalo here for a small fee. The Seehaus is located at the shore of the lake. There was already a restaurant here at the end of the 19th century. However, the Seehaus beer garden in its current form has only existed since 1985. It offers seating for 2,500 guests. Kleinhesseloher See also marks the end of the southern part of the English Garden. Okay, so we just left the southern part of the Englischer Garten, which is over here, and behind me is the Mittlerer Ring. That's the ring road around the middle ring road here around Munich. And in former times the southern part and the northern part was united, but because they built the ring road, it's now the park is divided, and there are some ideas to reunite the park. But well, let's go now to the northern part and discover what you can find there. The Mittlerer Ring somehow also represents a cultural border between the 2 halves of the park. While the southern part is much frequented by tourists, students and pleasure seekers, the northern part is virtually isolated and unknown to even most Munich residents. In fact, there are ideas to tunneling the Ringstraße to unite the park. Yet the realization of such an idea still seems a long way off in times of tight budgets. Mike and I got hungry and stopped off at the Hirschau beer garden. Hirschau is also the name given to the entire northern part of the English Garden after the once abundant game population here. Hirsch means deer in German. In the beer garden we treated ourselves to a small beer and crusty roast and half a chicken. Of course, you can also order other dishes from the kitchen. Freshly fortified, we first headed east to admire the Tivoli power station, which has stood here since 1895. It still feeds electricity into the public grid today. It is immediately noticeable that the northern part is significantly quieter than the south. Then we had a look at the Mini-Hofbräuhaus, a small but very popular beer garden in the middle of the northern part. From there we went to the place where the Eisbach flows into the Isar. There you could already see the Isar weir at Oberföhring. Of course, we went there too, especially as this place is historically significant. This is where the bridge of the Bishop of Freising once stood, which Duke Henry the Lion had to burn down in order to divert the sword trade across his bridge in Munich. Yes, Munich began with a crime, and I'll have to tell the story in detail in the future. We then cycled along the Oberer Jägermeisterbach, here the English Garden sometimes looks downright wild. There are simply so many places to linger and enjoy in peace, which are often overlooked by the crowds in the southern part of the English Garden. Wild garlic also sprouted in many corners. It really smells like garlic, so it's nice to make pesto. I don't know if I would collect it here, but nice thing to have it. We finally arrived at the Aumeister beer garden. The Aumeister was built in 1810 as a hunting lodge for the royal huntsmen. It was the turning point of the marathon of the 1972 Olympic Games. But I don't think the runners drank a beer here. It has room for 3,000 thirsty guests.
Du hast jetzt dein T-Shirt gesehen.
Prost. Okay, so we arrived at the northern part at the end of Englischer Garten, and behind me is the Aumeister, where we had a victory here, and yeah, that's the end. And from here on there's a little park, and then behind that there's only woods, and that's the end of Munich.
That was 5.4 kilometers, 3.5 miles through the English Garden. With all the detours, it was certainly 3 times as far. I hope you enjoyed the somewhat longer video. Go to the northern part of the English Garden because it's great. And if you want to book a tour of Munich, just get in touch by email and have a look at my homepage. Until the next video, Philip.